So, Mike, this is the last vlog that you will be in for 3 months because.
That's right, Martin.
And I'm sorry. Why don't you start? We've got Mothering Sunday, and it's a passage from Luke chapter 2. Or if you don't observe Mothering Sunday, it's Lent 4, in which case it's the prodigal son, so it's Fathering Sunday. So,
So let me have a go at the prodigal son to start with. So many different interpretations of the prodigal son out there. One interpretation is that the prodigal son is actually Jesus, and the prodigal son leaves his heavenly home, is profligate with the riches of heaven in terms of his generosity towards us, okay?
We being the swine.
We being the swine, yeah, absolutely.
Where did you get this one from?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's an interesting one. And eventually, after spending time with us, does on our behalf what we cannot do of ourselves, which is returns to the Father sorrowfully and penitently, taking our humanity with him. So that's a really unusual interpretation.
So who's the grumpy older brother?
The grumpy older brother, that's a good question. I didn't get that far on that one. So Bill Bresend, your friend, the American theologian, he has the idea that actually we are the compassionate father in this parable, in the same way that we were the shepherd in search of the sheep, and the woman in search of the lost coin, and that actually the prodigal son is one of the most unattractive figures in the scriptures, certainly in the Gospels, but that we, like the compassionate father, are called to give hospitality to embrace, to enable the finding of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, and rejoice in our finding and hospitality to them. Interestingly.
Okay.
Yeah. My preferred interpretation for today comes from Luigi Giussani, who was a Roman Catholic priest in the 1950s, 1960s. And what he talks about is how this could be understood in terms of our modern preoccupation with freedom, and in particular our sovereign freedom of choice and our autonomy. And he suggests that we are a bit like the prodigal son in Western culture today. And we, in our desire to realise our own pleasures and desires, see that many of the relationships around us and the expectations and duties on us are burdens which we need to release ourselves from in order to realise our dreams and aspirations. So like the prodigal, we demand our inheritance and leave our home and go into the far country where we can realise our dreams. But, he says, what do we find there when we actually idolise this sovereign freedom and this autonomy? We find not a father, but a master. We find not a home, but a pigsty. We find not relations of mutuality, love and hospitality, but we find ourselves isolated and nobody would give him anything. So he suggests, what happens with the prodigal son is he comes to his senses and he realises something of where his true freedom lies. Where does it lie? In his filial dependence upon his father. So he turns and returns and realises this. Now, if you ask me who the elder son is, the elder son is the one who has stayed at home, but he too has never realised this kind of freedom as filial dependence, because he has never regarded himself as the son of the father. Rather, we see from his complaint at the Father's merciful compassion towards the prodigal, that he's always had a relationship of servile slavery to the Father. He said, I've worked like a slave all these years and you've not given me even a goat in order that I could celebrate with my friends. So while he stayed at home, he too has never recognised or realised where his true freedom and joy lies, in this filial dependence to the Father. And of course this dovetails beautifully then with Mothering Sunday, doesn't it? Because whether the prodigal son is welcomed by the father or the mother doesn't really matter, because what we're saying here is that our true freedom, it rests in realizing our identity as our children of our mothering God and our fathering God, and living out of that identity. But the genius of Jesus is, I think, and the genius of the teacher Jesus in all this is this parable is so applicable in such a wide range of contexts, even to some of the trends and challenges of any age, such as modernity's preoccupation with this idol of the freedom of choice. So that's where I was.
Okay.
Where were you?
So again, attempting to put these two together.
Yeah.
So starting with the passage, the Luke passage. So it's Simeon talking to Mary and Joseph, and ending with the line to Mary that a sword will pierce your soul also. And where I go to with Mothering Sunday, and I think Mothering Sunday is a complicated occasion, because we do end up talking about our mothers, whereas the origins of Mothering Sunday was saying something about the role of the church in people's lives.
Yeah.
And if we see Mary as the type of the disciple, or the first disciple, or the principal disciple, therefore as an embodiment, in a sense, of the church, then what we're being drawn into by the words of Simeon is that the life of the church is one that carries the suffering of Christ. So as Mary will carry the suffering of Christ, the sword will pierce her own soul also, but will also share in the joys of the resurrection, which we know Mary was able to do because she was present for the resurrection. So there's something there about the nature of the church being seen in the figure of Mary. There's something for me. I mean, I remember when I, this may say a bit too much about the complicated relationship I had with my mother, but when I first had a sense of call to ordained ministry, so I was 15, there for me was a profound sense of being called by Mother Church. I mean, called by God, but called by God into Mother Church. There was something about the mothering of church that was profoundly important for me. And then if I then switch to the prodigal son, remembering, and you've already mentioned them, the widow's mite, the lost sheep and the widow's mite. Supposing, as another possibility, we see the shepherd, the widow, and the father as the church. Imagine Luke writing this for his community. And what's this an exhortation to do? Interestingly, the shepherd and the widow's mite, very similar stories. Someone's lost. And what do? As the church, you go out to find them, to bring them back. And so the angels will rejoice that a sinner is repented. Now, the interesting thing in the prodigal son is that whilst it's similar in some respects, because the son is lost, nobody goes to look for him. And there is a sense there that it would be, we know this, the experience of the church, just as it is the experience of a parent with a child, that a person sets off, determined to go in their own direction. And the worst thing you could possibly do is to run after them. You need to let them go. And having let them go, then something, you pray, happens. And in the story, it happens, that brings them back. And so, and then of course the older brother is just cross because nobody's been expressed their happiness that he's already there and this one's gone off and come back. And we know enough about, so this will be very early, but we can see in the first century, in the second century, we can see various instances where there was a real issue about what do you do about someone who has left the church, has apostatized, particularly under persecution, and then wants to come back.
Yeah.
So again, what you've got in the prodigal father is the prodigal mother. That is in the loving father. You've got the loving mother as in that embrace, and we've got to have a party and all of those characteristics you'd associate with a loving mother. Just so thrilled that their child had come home. So there's something there about for me about the nature of the church which connects both of them.
And sobering and challenging if you do take that interpretation, because one of the things, the details about the prodigal son is the father runs to meet the prodigal, which of course Kenneth Bailey, many years in Palestine, says is about protecting the prodigal son who's brought shame upon the village from the villagers who want to do him over because he's come back, this person who's shamed them. So that's a model for the church to protect this one. Yeah. Thank you.
So enjoy your sabbatical. And
Thanks
we look
very
forward
much.
to hearing and seeing lots when you come back.
Thank you very much.